Hello once again, everyone. This is Bob Martin, the RC Sub Guy with the NautilusDryDocks.com, bringing you another completed project. A quick overview of this 196 scale Vanguard Submarine kit offered by OTW out of the UK. Let's take a look. So this is a really cool model kit, and actually I really like the look of the British submarines. They have this like organic look that really reminds me of like whales. So it's really interesting to build and complete these boats, and they actually work really well. This particular one is modeled in 196 scale, which makes it 57 inches in overall length with a 5-inch beam. So there's lots of room inside to put all sorts of RC goodies to make it go. This one in particular is running the OTW dive module. It's 4¼ inches in diameter, and I'll show that to you in a minute. And our intention here is to walk you through this boat, how it was put together, and then ultimately get it in the water so you can see how it works. So one thing that I do want to mention about this particular boat is that I did not undertake the build from start to finish. If I did, you probably would have seen the entire process from beginning to end documented in a build-up video, as I am wont to do. This particular boat was actually traded into me in exchange for a different boat, and so all I did was finish it up, and that included the final installation and setup of the watertight cylinder, the external cosmetics, trimming, testing, and final assembly. So basically, this boat was given to me in a quasi-started state, and I finished it up. I'm really happy with it. One thing that I will note is that I noticed immediately that that cylinder is a little bit small for the boat. It probably needs another 2 inches of ballast tank in order to get this particular submarine up to the full surfaced water line. You'll see that in a moment when I put it in the swimming pool, that it floats a little bit lower than where that water line, that scum line that I put on there, would indicate that it needs to float at. Certainly this is not a problem in the slightest. It just means that the boat won't float when the tank is completely empty at the full surfaced water line that you would see in the full-sized boat. Benefit to this is to go from full surfaced water line down to submerged trim takes a little bit less time. So a little bit of a trade-off there, and absolutely no problem in terms of the functionality or performance of this boat. All right, okay, I know what you're saying, blah, 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 technical this, technical that, etc., etc. Let me see it in the water. Well, for those of you too impatient to sit through the technical aspects of an RC submarine, rest assured, it's time to get it wet. So here, all nice and neatly, you can see the main components that go into the submarine. Obviously, we have the hull, which features fiberglass and resin construction. We have our main drive battery, which is a nickel metal hydride, 5 amp hour battery pack that's been waterproofed with the addition of some heavy duty heat shrink. I've also added waterproof power connector to the end of that. We have a charging adapter for said battery pack. The 4 1/4 inch watertight cylinder, or dive module as OTW calls it. And we've got also our 6-channel computerized Vex Robotics radio transmitter. Let's talk about the guts of this particular boat, and that is the heart and soul of it, the 4 1/4 inch diameter dive module. So I'm going to start at the front end, and we'll work our way back, going through all of the individual components and how they relate to one another. This is the waterproof connector that connects directly to the main drive battery, and that's how you turn it on and off. You just simply plug it in and you're set to go. We have a magnetic connector that connects to the bow plane linkages of the boat. Rubber bellows seal there. Up on the top, we've got our main drive pump for the ballast system, and this is a 2-way gear pump that runs through an electronic solenoid valve that prevents any sort of back pressure from forcing that water back out again after it's pumped in. We have our forward dive plane servo there, and if we spin this over, we can see the dive controller on the bottom, and basically this is the module that takes the radio signal, converts it to power for the pump to both fill and empty the ballast tank. And this does have built-in functionality for fail-safe in case of loss of signal or low battery condition. Going into the middle here, you can see the main ballast compartment. It's got a baffle on the inside and a centralized conduit through which the power and servo leads run. On the forward edge, you can actually see some leads as well that protrude into that ballast tank. There's one on the top and 2 down on the bottom. You can see it a little better when I spin that over like that. And that is how the ballast system determines if the tank is full or empty. So in this particular case, the ballast tank is empty. Once you fill it, the water reaches that top probe, the pump shuts off automatically, and likewise, when you pump the water out, it reaches the lower probes and turns the pump off again. Going into the back section here, you can see several of the main components. The main 6-channel receiver. We've got our rudder and dive plane servos, our main drive motor, and you can see the automatic pitch controller up on the top edge over there. On the bottom, we've got our electronic speed controller, and that is basically the extent of that rear compartment. 2 magnetic linkages in the back, stainless steel 4mm diameter shaft that connects to our propeller in the boat. To gain access to the cylinder is actually a really simple process. There's some knurled nuts. You simply undo those and the cap comes off. This center piece of acrylic tubing slides off and everything comes apart for easy access. I've added several lengths of servo extensions on here that makes it much easier to connect the various components to the receiver. This is the transmitter for the boat, and the way that I have it set up and the way that I prefer to set up my boats is you have your rudder on your right stick, left and right. You have your forward dive planes, which are responsible for controlling the depth of the boat on the vertical axis.
On the left-hand side, you have the channel 3. You've got the electronic speed controller, or your throttle, so forward and reverse. And channel 4 is actually blank, so there's some additional features that you could add, and that channel can be used for that at a later date. On the back, we've got channel 5, and there's 2 buttons, up and down. This is the ballast control. So when you push down, the model submerges, and when you push up, the model surfaces. Nice and simple. Channel 6 on the back is actually the rear dive plane override for the automatic pitch controller. So the rear planes on this submarine are actually completely autonomous, being run by that automatic pitch controller that will work in an effort to keep the boat on an even keel at all times. But if, for example, you wanted to do an emergency dive or an emergency surface, you could utilize these buttons to control those rear dive planes and force a full surface or full dive condition.
All right, now that we've gone through the components of the submarine, we've got to put them in the actual boat. And to gain access to the inside of the hull is very simple. There's actually 2 little bolts, one here at the front part of the upper hull and one here at the back of the upper hull. Simply undo those with a small flat-headed screwdriver, pull them out, and the entire upper hull lifts off nice and neatly, just like so. Now we've got full access to the interior of the boat, ready for installation of our components. First thing that we're going to do is take our 5 amp nickel metal hydride 12 volt battery pack, and we're going to put it in the cradle that is designed for it right in the front of the boat. It nestles neatly down in there, just like this, with the tail end pressed up against this bulkhead. I put the connector to the forward edge so that the cable runs back along the edge of it. That done, we take our cylinder and simply drop it straight down into the hull. We've got these knurled nuts that sit in these openings, and it can't move in a rotational manner. We're not going to connect our battery at this point because that would power up our cylinder, but what we are going to do is move to the back and make up our connections. So the first thing that we're going to do is connect our main drive line, and we do that by sliding the entire thing aft. Just like that. The prop will pop out the back of the boat, and that allows us to slip this universal joint over that output on the drive shaft of the cylinder, and we pull it all the way forward until it can't move forward anymore. Just going to take our Allen wrench, give it a little tighten there, and now it is completely locked into the output shaft of our main drive motor. Now, really easily, and this is the part I love most about utilizing these magnetic connections, we simply pull this up, it snaps into place. We pull this up, snaps into place. All of our linkages are now completely made up, ready to go. One thing I'll note at this point, if you take a look at these connectors here, this is how you would make adjustments to the linkage if you needed to adjust the throw of the rudder or the rear dive planes. You just loosen up the set screw, move it forward or back, and that gives you full adjustability. Moving to the front part of the boat, the last thing that we need to do here is connect our forward dive planes, and those simply connect magnetically there, and our connection is now completely made up. What would be a great idea at this point is to test the functionality of all of the various components before we get too much further. So the first thing that I'm going to do is extend the antenna of the transmitter. I'm going to turn it on, and then I'm going to make up the connection between the battery and that watertight cylinder, and it just presses in place. The pump kicks on for a second. You put the screw on this collar so that it locks in place, tuck the cable in, and it is ready to go. So let's test the different functions here. We'll start with channel 1, and that would be the rudder. We've got full throw, left and right. Let's check our rear dive plane override. We'll check our throttle here. And we can check our forward dive planes, and hopefully you can see those. And of course, channel 5 on the back there, if we press down, the pump kicks in. And obviously without any water, it can't pull anything in. As a note, this pump does not like to be run dry. Do not run it for any more than a couple of seconds to double check the functionality at any given time. Make sure you run it with some water. So the last thing that we need to do is lock this cylinder in place so it can't move. And to do that, you simply take this heavy-duty elastic band, loop it over these hooks, and that keeps it locked in so it can't move out of this cradle. And of course, the last thing that we need to do is put the top back on the boat. Make sure those orientation pins are completely aligned. We'll grab our little brass hold down bolts